Ja, guten Morgen, good morning everybody. Welcome to our event. It is a long tradition that Architecture Dialogue presents architecture here at the Swissbau. We started actually in 2002, and every Swissbau we organize a lecture. After 20 years, our foundation is 20 years now, we thought it would be a good idea to collaborate and to do a co-event together with Countdown 2030. And Aline is here, and I represent the Architekturdialoge. Our foundation is existing since 20 years, and we are a platform of architecture here in Basel, and our goal is to make contemporary architecture accessible to professionals and also to lay people. And we organize about 25 events all over the year. And Aline wants to present now Countdown 2030.
Yeah, Countdown 2030 is a collective of building professionals who places the urgence of the climate and the biodiversity crisis at the center of their activism. And we work towards a sustainable building culture. Maybe you know, but like today's construction is responsible for around 30% of CO2 emissions, 50% of resource consumption, and 80% of waste across Switzerland. And we therefore have the duty to change our discipline.
When we thought about the theme and the name of this event, we call it Re-Impulsive Architecture. And the question was, how do contemporary architects approach the renewal of iconic structures, such as the Centre Pompidou 2030? And what does it mean to build anew in the age of repair? The panel will bring together voices from France, from Japan, Switzerland, and Germany, and will reflect the future of architectures through transformation.
The transformation to an ecologically sustainable world is fundamental, and we believe it will change politics, business and science, cultural and social life, resource flows and energy systems, and so the physical world and, of course, the construction sector. And contemporary design reflects this transition.
The event will start with a keynote from Moro Kuzinocki. Nicolas Moro and Hiroko Kuzinocki are the lead architects and principal designers of the renewal of Centre Pompidou 2030. They are a Franco-Japanese architectural practice founded in 2011, and they have done very important projects, or are actually in their office, the Guggenheim Museum in Helsinki, and also the Paris Institute of Political Studies in Paris. And Moro Kuzinocki has been appointed as the leading designer for the renovation of the Centre Pompidou, which realization just began a few months ago.
After the keynote lecture, we will open a discussion on conservation, reuse, transformation, and responsibility between Judith Sold, architect and chief editor at Espatium magazine, Zurich, Tina Küng, architect at DU Studio, Zurich, Muck Petzit, Architekten and RR Architecture, Munich, Berlin, and Stefan Wölser, architect at Stefan Wölser Plus, Zurich. Yeah, we please welcome Nicolas and Hiroko.
Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I am Nicolas Moreau. Thank you for the invitation today. We are pleased to present a bit of our work and the Pompidou mostly today. Iloko.
Yes, thank you for let us joining this event. Yes, we are happy to introduce rapidly about ourselves, and we have a limited time, so we reserve time to more talk about the Pompidou project.
So we are based mostly in Paris. No, we are a small firm, but maybe 20 people, and focus on cultural buildings. One of the highlights is really the Guggenheim that we won this competition in 2015 against it was 1,600, 700 something. The biggest competition ever in terms of participants, and that gave us really the chance to develop what the building has never been built, but it gave us a visibility and chance to do other buildings around the world, and in Sydney and also now in Paris. I will show you. Also, this project is very meaningful for us because it's kind of crystallized some concept ideas that we are still developing and trying to implement, which is this idea of in-between space, or MA, that Iloko could develop more, since it's a very Japanese approach of thinking space and time. Which is this fragmented and in-between space that we believe is a moment that in the architecture that could expand life, expands poetry, or expands your own contemplation when you are after visiting a museum in particular. You need this moment of being with yourself. And I don't know, we can speak a lot about but that's not the main topics. Iroko's drawings, you want to speak, maybe?
Yes, maybe. We started from this competition to make a hand drawing together with a mind map that we're going to show later. It's a black and white drawing, try to not invite people to too rapidly understand the project, but rather spending time to get familiar slowly. So it was the idea with this fragmented volume that the visitor can really make their own experience rather than being entertained by the overly designed building. So this is a mind map. Again, it's shown in black and white with a key element which are normally not appearing in the competition brief, but there are the essence that we believe is very important for the museum experience, like the flavor of the good coffee or a very calm corner that you can spend a moment of meditation. So this kind of thing is not politically strong enough, so it doesn't appear printed in the paper, but it's fundamentally important. So this is something that we try to give the value and not to forget in the process of conception. The next project is a powerhouse Paramata. It's going to be built. So it's a real project. It's actually going to be open this year, around October. It's in Parramatta City. It's the biggest hub from Sydney. So it's 30,000 square meters exhibition space. Quite similar scale as the Pompidou. Actually, there's many common points with the Pompidou. It is a region with many young generation growing. So it's going to be the first cultural facility, which is going to be the first social cultural hub in the center. Doesn't have a local stage of the art piece, so it's going to be the exhibition every time based on the commission. Yes. It was built with a system of structure that we invented with Japanese engineer structure Jun Sato. We call it a lattice, lattice, lattice. It's a combination of the three layers, scale of the lattice, combining the smallest lattice, which is the size of a hand, which reminds you of the body scale. Combining the small size, become a medium size. We can use this truss system to build the building. And then combining the medium scale, become large scale to make the this infrastructural size of building. Again, we made this mind map. We don't go to the detail. Okay, so now, Pompidou.
So we can slow down. I see. Yes, so the Pompidou Center, so it's nearly 50 years now since the completion. And the building, as it's aged, and there is a need of refurbishing. So the project, there was a competition launched first, just for purely renovation, just changing the facades, changing the joints, the systems, etc., removing the pollution from asbestos. And an engineer team won that competition about 5 years ago. And then the president, Laurent Lebon, the president of the Centre Pompidou, realized that it would have been a missed opportunity to not rethink the usage of the Pompidou. Just reopening as it is would be a missed opportunity. And then they decided to launch a second competition, which is the one we won, which is about rethinking usage. And we are somehow married and made a joint team with the engineers to go together to the construction, which is starting in a few months now. So our proposal is, so first, I think it's acknowledging that there is an heritage. And this building is not protected, actually, and we are working on the protection. This is also something which is playing a role in the process. But our approach was already very, I mean, the word respectful, I don't know if it's the best word, but I think it is about that. It's acknowledging the qualities and approaching the renovation in a manner that we don't want to denaturer, no? To denaturer, to change what is making the identity and trying to keep what is making the authenticity and the qualities, initial qualities. And even more, I think it is about an understanding, after 50 years, there is layers of accumulation of change that has been processed by the operators, the different directors. There is 11 directions inside the Pompidou. It's 2,000 people working in. It's a city in the city. And they have been creating slabs, adding things, changing facade, not necessarily in the best manner, or even putting in danger the structure at a certain moment by opening a certain area. So our approach was to understand, to remove somehow this kind of pollution, these kind of things, and to go back to maybe some ideals that was there 50 years ago, which is about transparency, porosity, transversality between fields, art, books, music, live theater, or live art vivant, which was really this concept in the 1979 when it opened, which was very subversive, crazy moment in the history. And the Pompidou is this incarnation of that moment. So how to go back? Somehow, it's funny because it's going back in a respectful manner, but I feel that this attitude is somehow subversive today. So this, you know the story of the competition. So it was an open competition, more than 500 teams. Monsieur Pompidou and his wife chose a project, and they were very much implied in the process. There was Philippe Johnson in jury, and there was Jean Prouvé, and this crazy project happened, which is really the baby of Renzo Piano, because it was really how he made his career. And that was the site before the construction, and that was the drawings at the competition stage, where you could see that there was a lot of evolutions between what they have initially thought and what we have today, but there is core elements, which is this logic of a plug-in city, no? Grid, where you have the box, you have the large grid, and behind the building, which is creating this double height. Or the fact the building is lifted also is something that's a bit disappeared, but is still there in a way, and I will go in detail about that. The Agora and Forum, which is going down in the ground, and you can see the connection with the cars, which was also like kind of this dogmatism of the 70s, or everything should be organized around the car. So there is a tunnel actually next to this building. Buses were supposed to go there, and trucks below.
Never happened.
And here you can see an evolution. After they won, they maybe did a bit too much, trying to find other solutions, which they never. But it's funny, no, to see the piazza, how they wanted to make it maybe more softer, more with more plants also at a certain moment was coming. And that's just after the opening. The opening was a huge success. The story says that people were scared that there was not enough people, so they planned, I will put it back, they planned a circus on the piazza because they were scared that people would not enter, so the circus would, in case people were unhappy, they could go to the circus. Well, and then it was a huge success that we still know. It's millions of visitors every year. And the question is now with this legacy, how we see the things, no? And first, the opportunity came that, as I've seen, I'll show you the slide with the parking. Sorry, we'll go back. Oh, it's a bit. Oh, I will have another slide. Never mind. Below the piazza, you have 5 levels actually. It's an iceberg. There is a production unit of 10 workshops. There is also a bit of storage. There is machinery, but there is also 3 layers of parkings, which are under usage. Also, there is a tunnel that has been built by the city to bring the big trucks the delivery, and the tunnel has been built too low. So there is never a truck to enter in this basement. So that gives us now the opportunity because we can create exhibition rooms underground below that piazza, removing where the cars are not anymore necessary. And it gives us a chance to create something that has been also disappeared, is the vastness of the Agora. That's a sketch that has been made by Renzo for the competition, to the competitors, as an inspirational moment. And you can see this idea of using below the piazza as a public space and finding a way to have the vibrant core again back in the Agora. Here's the piazza. Well, that was during the Olympic Games. Yes, here this is the original drawings. Like here, we can see. We'll try to find a plan to show you. Yes, this is a bit technical, but I think it makes sense because it helps to understand what is the accumulation, the change over time. So there is 3 periods. In green is 85 to 86. Then there is a period of 90s to 2000, and in blue and in pink, it's 2001 to 2020. So this document has been made with our architect of heritage. It's called like chronology relative that helps to understand what is authentic and what has been changed, and to understand on one plan immediately what are the big change. And what is interesting is actually on the left, number 1, green, and on the green right, where you have a cinema today, these 2 spaces has been added quite quickly after the opening. And the reason why, because initially it was exterior spaces. And there was very quickly issue with, I would say, what I call la salubrité publique, no? Dirt and people living there, camping or whatever, and accumulation of dirt. So the decision was made to make a facade there. But the problem is they implemented the cinema, which is an opaque program. So they killed basically the north side of the facade, côté Rambuteau. And there was an exhibition on the south, which is mostly the exhibition for architecture collection in general. But it's also very quickly made this facade is opacified for the use of the exhibition. So finally, these 2 movements, which came very early, somehow killed the concept of transparency and openness, where we see in the drawings that the building was lifted and you were supposed to be able to enter totally in a seamless manner inside the building. So the first move is to bring this program below the piazza and to make this program behind that facade transparent. So cafe and restaurant on the south, and instead of a cinema, it will be a place for kids. So it's we call the pôle nouvelle génération, which will be connected with the library, which is above, which will be addressing really to the generation from even 0 to 15. In blue, where you have the 5 in the center, it's one of the major changes also that happens. The Piano called it in some entretien, the maladie des mètres carrés. So the users want to have more square meters. I told you there is 11 directions, so there is kind of, it's like a big big colocation, or sharing house, but they all try to get the best room, and when there is not enough space, they just built. So they closed the agora, adding floors, and the 3 and 3 on the left, in the center still, on each side of the center of the hall, it was mezzanine added also. So again, square meters, killing in a way the vastness of the agora, which was supposed to be, and it was at the beginning in the 70s, the inaugural exhibition was massive and monumental exhibition, was not able to do anymore. So our approach is somehow to understand this and try to remove these layers of this accumulation of change that has been making the concept less legible. Also, there is a question of accessibility, because when you are in a wheelchair, you cannot access to the main entrance. So that's a problem. So this is a stair that you can see here. Here is drawings. Silo, could you want to just say some words, maybe? I'm speaking too much.
No. Yeah, it's our scheme, 2030, again showing black and white. It was a competition element. So we use this word, forum, agora, maybe it's not familiar word for everyone. Forum is, we call it forum for the ground floor, connecting with piazza. Agora is downstairs, so actually it's the basement 1 floor. So as Nicola explained, under the piazza, we're going to have a new 2,500 extra gallery space without natural light, which is the first time in the history for the Pompidou, because their exhibition space are actually located in the 5th and the 6th floor with a panoramic view, which is very good for the visitor, but not really easy for the curator. So they are very happy to have this new extra gallery space downstairs with more curated situation. So you will discover this new type of gallery in the opening 2030. As Nicola explained, on the south side, we will have the restaurant, which is free access from exterior. So you are not supposed to go to the museum, but just go to the restaurant. This is possible. And the library is located. Today, we enter from the main entrance and we go out from the same position, but the new scheme, we enter from the same entrance, but we go out on the south side, so that the restaurant and cafe area are going to be on your way. We try to recover the size of the hall connecting the forum and the agora, so it makes the curatorial team of Pompidou to make the bigger exhibition on site, and you have an amphitheater staircase, so people can have a pause, or it can be the theater with a temporary performance can happen on the entrance space.
Maybe a word about the transparency. No? Yeah, but there is some change also, which is we are making, which is improving the transparency. It's almost not recognizable, but if you are familiar with the building behind the evacuation stairs that you can see here a bit, it's opaque for fire purpose. The wall has to be fire resistant 2 hours. Also, this large plate of 7,000 square meters are divided in 3. To create, ce qu'on appelle in French, it's
fire compartment.
Compartments, no? Like, and it's opaque too. So our move is to make this glass 2 hours fire rated, which is quite a challenge actually, because it will be 2 hours resistant from both sides, and it will give a transparency. So from Rambuteau to Tinguely, Liquide Saint-Phal, the fontaines, you will be able to see through the building entirely. And 360 degrees. And that's something that is a change from the initial building, but I believe is closer to the concept in a way.
So we see the amphitheater seating device that we are actually designing. So in downstairs, we reconfigure the program. So we will have 2 theaters and 2 cinemas and 2 new galleries. We called it Grande Boîte and Petite Boîte.
Yes, this is underground, and all this blue area will be accessible to the public. So it's a very large plateau where you have a lot of possibilities of performing, exhibiting, for 2 cinema, 1 theater, galleries, immersive spaces. So that will create a unique tool in Paris for performance. And I think also Laurent Lebon, the president of the Centre, is really desiring to make this more like also like concerts and live and open to the neighbors as a social hub.
Mm. A bit about the BPI, so Bibliothèque
Bibliothèque publique d'information.
Public Information. So this is some images from the opening time. So it was designed with a blue tone. But this was a children's space. Actually, we don't see anymore in the center. So with associated designer Frida Escobedo, the Mexican female designer, is helping us to design this new 2 levels of library space. Yes. Sorry, we go quickly. Anyway, you will find it in the video later, this space. So we apply this time the tone of blue so that it doesn't compete with the presence of the pipe on the ceiling for the air treatment, to have a more horizontal, so we have a kind of sky-like blue ceiling and like a sea. So the blue carpet and the blue low furniture, so that the clear, net panoramic transparency is conserved. Yes. So, and this is a particular strong wish from the President Lebon to make the roof accessible, which was not possible at the opening time because there was a pipe evacuating the air, used air, which may contain some chemicals which cannot be good for the public. But since we modernize the MEP system, the roof become clean, so it's going to be accessible for the public to enjoy the panoramic view. Some images from the closing event. So 2025, we have the series of events, many party, many installation. And now buildings start to sleep for 5 years. Yes.
Voilà.
Yes.
And I think now there is a video that can be shown.
Please. Could you play the piano video?
Yep.
Je crois qu'on s'est toujours trompé à propos du centre Beaubourg. C'était plutôt une parodie de la haute technologie. C'est plutôt un parcours spatial dessiné par Jules Verne. À chaque fois qu'on nous parlait de culture, Henri serait même avait mal à l'estomac. Nous avions l'impression d'être complètement étrangers à l'esprit de À nos yeux, la place était aussi importante que le bâtiment. Dans une ville aussi dense que Paris. Elle crée le vide qui rend l'existence du sang possible. Peut-être même nécessaire. Et c'est grâce à la place que le centre appartient à la ville.
Voilà. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Applaudissements.
Very much. Thank you very much for this very insightful lecture.
Thank you.
My name is Judith Scholt, and I have the honor to moderate this following panel. Please take your seats. Well, we have heard a lot of very interesting information and also very inspiring ideas. And also, of course, now we are here with a lot of questions. And we would like to discuss them. That's why we are here. First, I will invite the other participants of this panel to join me on stage. I will briefly introduce them, and I will also make a very short introduction to the subject of re-impulsive architecture and to the different focus points of the discussion that we want to have. And then we will start. And by we, I mean, of course, the panel, but I also mean you, dear audience. So at the in the second part of the discussion, we will have the opportunity to ask questions. So please keep your questions in mind and don't hesitate to ask them as soon as we open the panel. So you already know Hiroko and Nicolas. So I would like to introduce the other participants, and please join us on stage. So sitting next to Nicolas, you have Tina Kung from DU Studio. DU stands for Detour Universe, based in Zurich. I think you know all the guests, but I introduce them all the same. So she founded her office together with Stefan Hegele. And Stefan and Tina are regular guests and also lecturers in academia in Switzerland and also in Germany. And they have written a lot of articles and given a lot of interviews that appear in various platforms. I would like to quote their motto, which I think is interesting to start. We love to build and we love not to build. We are passionate about architectural details, effective construction, and spatial intensity. And we are eagerly trying to avoid unnecessary building. Now that's interesting for an architect. We'll come back to that later. Sitting next to her, Muk Petzet from Muk Petzet Architekten and RRR Architecture, Munich and Berlin. Muk has studied philosophy as well as architecture and founded his office in 2003. His work has been published nationally and internationally and has also received a series of awards. His motto is most with less, and I also would like to quote him. Our ambition is to achieve as much positive social and economic impact as possible with the least negative impact on the environment. We do this by questioning whether buildings are really needed, by propagating the reuse of existing buildings and infrastructures, by following the rule of minimal intervention. And RRR architecture stands for Reduce, Reuse, Recycle Architectural Association. And last but not least, Stefan Wülser from Stefan Wülser Plus in Zurich. He made an apprenticeship as a draughtsman, actually, and then he studied architecture and founded his own office, which is named Stefan Wülser Plus since 2020. One more quote. The plus in the company name stands for a consistently open, rational, collaborative, transdisciplinary and optimistic architectural practice. End of the quote. Stefan has worked as an assistant, as a guest lecturer at different universities, and 2 years ago he accepted a professorship at Hochschule Luzern. Now, our topic is reimpulsive architecture, and what does that mean? What does reimpulsive mean? Actually, it's an impulse in two directions. One direction is to give new impulse to old buildings. That's clear. It's not so clear how to achieve it, but the idea at least is clear. But then I think an impulse can go in both directions. So we also have the impulse that those architectures and those working processes, which need to be different from the old ones, can give back to society. So it's an impulse in two directions, which is life at the end of the day. So I start with the situation, which is depressing, and then we come to the better ideas. So as you know, the situation is not very a good one. The construction industry is extremely resource intensive. And for Switzerland, this means that the construction industry consumes 60 to 70 million tons of materials per year. And it is also accounting for around 80% of total waste of this country, for 40% of the final energy consumption, and for 1/3 of the domestic CO2 emissions. You have to count the double of those CO2 emissions which are emitted abroad to produce all the materials that we need here. So those are very frightening numbers. So this has to change, and not only in Switzerland. The task of reducing CO2 emissions is particularly urgent, and the fact is also politically accepted, at least in theory. With the ratification of the Paris Climate Agreement in 2015, UN countries committed to halving their greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 compared to 1990 levels. We are not on course. And they also committed to emitting no more greenhouse gases than they remove from the atmosphere by either natural or artificial means by 2050, which is the net zero target. And when it comes to the operation of buildings, at least something has going on in Switzerland. CO2 emissions from buildings in operation have fallen by 1/3 over the last 3 decades, despite a simultaneous construction boom and despite an almost 50% increase of the energy reference area per person. So we had a huge growth, and at the same time, we emit less CO2 in the operation of our buildings. And this is very good news, and it also applies for a lot of European countries, so that's not bad. New buildings, thanks to new regulations, can be operated in a CO2 neutral ways. We have very good standards. We get even new ones that are even stronger. So that's the good news. But then we have the grey CO2, the embodied CO2, and this remains a problem because in energy-efficient new buildings, it accounts for 2/3 of the total CO2 emissions over the entire life cycle. And the biggest problem is that this huge amount of CO2 is emitted mainly in the first years, so at the very beginning of the life cycle, so now, in the present. And this is diametrically opposed to the goal of halving emissions by 2030. 2030, that's in 4 years. I mean, that's tomorrow. So what we plan today has to work in 2030 without emissions. We have to act now. And the best thing would be not to build at all. And if we build, then we should build with what is already here, so reuse and what is here, or use regenerative materials. So the question comes back to us. What do we need to do so as professionals? And also, by doing so, what can we give back to society? We will concentrate on those two topics in our discussion. So, on the reuse and the transformation of buildings and building components and building materials, so the new impulse for old buildings, and on the architectural strategies, on design strategies, which have to change, and on our responsibility as professionals, so on the impulse that we can give back to society. So let's start with the reuse of building. We have heard, which is very shocking, that Centre Pompidou is not even protected as yet. So that's quite an interesting fact. I didn't know. I hope that it will be soon. But anyway, Centre Pompidou is quite clear. I mean, it's an icon. We know it. We won't destroy it. But the situation for most of the other existing buildings is, of course, worse. They are not considered historically valuable. They are not always looking very attractive at the first glance. So they are free to be demolished. And investors and developers often choose to demolish them because to build a new building seems easier and faster and, of course, then cheaper in consequence. There are no surprises, there are no uncertainties, they don't have to deal with existing constraints. So we have to convince them. We have to convince them not to destroy, but to refurbish, to transform, to rethink. And now the question is, how do we proceed? How do we proceed to achieve this? We need to have good arguments. So I would like to ask you first, Tina, Stefan, and Muk, what do you tell your commissioners? How do you proceed? Maybe you can really start with an example of your experience. I think there's no right or wrong answer. There are different strategies, but I think it's important that we learn from each other. Who wants to start?
Maybe I can start with just like picking one project we're working on right now, and which I find is an interesting project because it's a newly built school. So it's a new building. But I think at the very start of the competition, we were looking at the site of the environment, of the habitat, of sociologically, but also like biodiversity of plants that are there. And I think in every project we start with looking at what is there already, whether it is building mass, whether it is plants, whether it is whatever. And I think for us in every project, this is the starting point, to look around what is there, even if it's a new building. And in this case, there was like a little forest. There were like 3 cedre d'Atlas, like really old trees that can become 1,000 years, I think. And they were all up to demolition. But there were also several buildings on the building plot, but also aside the building plot. And I think now our project is a new building. It also does a bit of demolition of pavilions that are on site, but it also includes very much this yes, these things that are there, like we take into the school existing buildings. We don't hesitate to say, well, we can do a classroom in this old building, doesn't matter. We can do like spaces for the neighborhood in that other building. We will connect the new building with the old buildings. We try to not touch the plans that are already there. So we were also part of the landscape architecture. We didn't have a landscape architect because we wanted to have those things be the same as we would handle with a building. I think it's so important that we not just think of the object, the building, but also to other parts that are already there. And I think landscape is a huge part we as architects often forget. And I think it's really important that we also look out of our object and see what is the connection. As you, I think it was your first sentence when you were talking about these in-between spaces. I forgot the Japanese word, ma. But I think it's super interesting to not just stop at the facade. But your question was how we talk then to clients about it. And I think it's so much easier if you start from the beginning with these topics. You can rely on history. You can really tell the story of a place before you even start talking about architecture or a building. And I think this is super important that, when we start talking to a client, we hold quite long presentations, maybe an hour of really telling the story of the whole thing. And then in the end, maybe it's 5 minutes about projects. But we really go back and try to excavate all the topics that could be there already in this place. And I think this is super, I think it's quite often you can start with talking about those things with the client, and it resonates quite very much.
Mm-hmm. Actually, it was like acknowledge the heritage. Mm. That was a very strong point in your presentation, so that maybe the client has to develop also a knowledge of the site and of the value of what is already there. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I think I find it quite surprisingly that in biology or something, really, it's just natural to talk about the habitat, but for human beings, it's kind of, okay, let's start from anew. Mm-hmm. And I wonder why there is such a difference in terms of biodiversity and human beings, because I think it's equally important for us.
Mm-hmm. Should we do like that? So, first of all, congratulations. Naturally, we all envy you to work on such a building in such a good way. Thank you very much. I hope very much that the result is something like Centre Pompidou at the beginning. Still, naturally, we all agree that this is heritage and everybody, and you're lucky that it's not under protection because you have more freedom. And maybe you have also more freedom to do less. So I think it's great. Naturally, we've, like you said, Judith, it's a different case in normality. And there's these two worlds, heritage, non-heritage, and very strange that somebody says, okay, this is protected, and then you have to take care of everything, every layer, everything is kind of under protection. And there, if we go in the normality, you have to fight for keeping things. And like you give a very good direction. You have to awaken something like a love for what is there. So you first, as an architect, yourself have to, how ugly and horrible this thing is, you have to love it. But you have to find points where also, like you said, maybe with the plants, it doesn't matter. With a nice story, something where you suddenly think, okay, because often the problem is that yeah, the client or he thinks this thing is horrible, and this is we always talk about rational reasons for taking down buildings. They are not efficient enough, not load-bearing enough. The ceiling heights, they have pollution. All these reasons are mostly lies, because the main reason is that things are not liked, and the client wants something, and the architect also. The architect wants to do something. This is why we studied architecture. So this is the biggest problem, is this normal want of change for change's sake. And to kind of stop that, for me, it's important not only to wake up the maybe slumbering love of these things, but to calculate, to give lots of numbers. Okay, it's very boring in a way. So I clearly think that if we transform things cleverly, intelligent, it costs much less. Maybe this example is a bit different. Mm-hmm. We are happy to spend everything. So to make a transparent wall 2 hours fire resistant, because we know it's super important. But in normal transformations, it's also super important that it's just cheaper. Why not? And it has to make sense in many ways. And you mentioned naturally the energy or the embodied emissions. And today we can argue with that. And if we, as architects, we have to learn to calculate, we have to understand these relations very well. We have to understand that it clearly makes no sense to take anything down and replace it. It makes no sense at all if you look at emissions. And we have these goals of 2030, in Germany it's 2045. We want to have a CO2 neutral society. And you have 20 years for an amortization of a huge kind of investment in emissions. And you cannot amortize this. It's impossible. So it makes no sense, but you also have to know your numbers.
You have to know the numbers, but there is a problem with the numbers, because, I mean, as an architect, you can quantify the amount of CO2 that you are emitting if you build a new and compare it to a refurbishment or a transformation. But at the end of the day, the investor or the commissioner doesn't have to pay for it.
No, but...
And what other arguments can you bring? Maybe, I don't know. What do you say, Stefan?
Yeah, maybe I can connect to that by answering this question, because I think the selection of the panel you did, anyway, we agree about the necessity of these things. But what is interesting already to me is that we address these issues on various points. So in addition to these numbers, I mean, we also included this as our mission statement. You quoted in the beginning in relation to the plus. We talk about rational issues. We try to demystify as much as possible in conversation with the client, but we also want to include this optimistic part. And I think already the question that you asked is super interesting. You know, how do we convince the clients? Because when we start working, normally there already is a client. And that's maybe also something we have to address now. I mean, this kind of contact with the existing building should happen earlier in a way. I mean, sometimes when the client did his numbers already, it's kind of too late to negotiate the most important facts about the project that is happening. I mean, there also like this openness of the competition you presented today is super interesting, because it opened up a field where you can actually do intelligent things, and it's not narrowed down by numbers in a list of requirements already in the brief. And I think that's something that started to interest me or us as an office in the last couple of years. How do we kind of design the first moment of contact with the building, but also with clients, to negotiate what is actually of value? What do we actually address? Because if this is limited in a typical modernist way in a couple of criteria or a list of criteria, then it's very difficult to do like rational, intelligent projects because it's often about Zielkonflikt, like a conflict of interest. No? And these things, I guess, we also have to address. Besides all these issues about the narration of a place or the numbers, like how do we come to a position where we can work on these parameters in the beginning and not be the specialists to solve the problem, because then it's kind of a bit of a strange profession we're heading towards if the problem is formulated and we now have to solve it.
Does that mean that you identify sites or buildings and then that you go and address the possible commissioner?
I mean, this is one consequence to try to create projects that don't exist, kind of. One very interesting direction to go to, and the other is to just try to do kind of also a bit of lobby work or groundwork to motivate people who actually want to build something to include us in the process, to communicate that it's actually of double-sided interest to contact us early and not when you think you know what you want.
You want to add? Listening to the episode, I'm thinking about our ongoing projects. It's a new construction at the Parameter Museum, because we're working on the Pompidou, and at the same time we are delivering a new building of the same size. One survived only 50 years, one started the long life starting this year. And what we said to the client of the new museum is that this operation team, the client, is presenting only the first generation of the users of the building. So the life length of the building is much longer than the short period of the director and operation team. So a certain level of modesty, but also the anticipation for the future generation to have a space to gain attachment with the building so that they can find their place to customize and reflect the time trend of that period, not defined perfectly from the first generation. So this kind of hand-overing the kind of message from the first generation to the second, third, this kind of attitude is fundamentally change the way of making the project. This is something that we learn. At the same time, when we did the competition of Pompidou, we found a statement from the Rogers and Renzo that this building is supposed to be renewed every 25 years. So the skeleton remains, but the interior is supposed to be redefined by the generation. We found it like, it's so emotional because we are thinking the same thing for the project in Parramatta. So this means that the program and the building cannot be one-to-one. The program should have the portion, like a intentionally kind of reserved portion to be heritated and activated by the future generations that we don't know yet. So this, when we talk about the concept of ma and in-between space, this spared and necessary today, but gonna be necessary maybe later. This space is fundamentally kind of future-proofing system that we try to implicate in our conception. This is something that we talk regularly with the Pompidou team as well. We try to remove the dust accumulated over 50 years, but we are not trying to make it at the original level, but we try to remove even more to prepare the spare space for the next 50 years, starting from 2030, so that this building can survive maybe in 100 years. So this is the kind of a vision that we'd like to share daily with the client and prepare the mindset of the users every day. Maybe I'm a bit aside.
I think you're in the middle of the topic, because that implies actually a great modesty from us architects. So that's the idea of we're not building for our egos or for the ego of the commissioner, but we are building for the next generation. And the next generation will change things and would want to change things. So that's not a creation, but maybe it starts with a creation, but actually it very quickly becomes also like care for the building or care for the site, which is a much more modest position, and maybe also an argument, if I come back to the question, how to convince your commissioner to discover this love and discover this care, then maybe that's also an argument, but because maybe he or she has children or nephews.
Just to make a distinction, because you have been working on new museums, and the Centre Pompidou has also this openness. So generally, it's a different approach I think it's very good what you say, that we need to be, this is also the visionary of your client, that they asks for architects to be responsible for the programming. Right? But when we have a normal situation, it will never fit. So you have too small rooms, you have, I don't know, you have always things that are not fitting. And this is the difference when you really deal with it. You have a different mind, you have to also convince the client that this is a quality. This can be a quality, because often in this unfitting, too big, too small, too low, all these horrible things why buildings actually are demolished, we have to find a quality, and we have to have a totally different mindset for that. So in your new projects, you can introduce this openness, but we hardly find it in real space.
But that also means that you're not working only in terms of space and buildings, but that if you get a building, an existing one, then actually you are creating or designing a program. You are designing the new possibilities for the building.
You have to work on the software.
Yes.
Otherwise, you have to change a lot. Then it's more expensive to rebuild than to build. But this is what the intelligence then means, is that you are not imposing something like a program, but you find it. You find it in the existing, in the possibilities. I think that's a big difference.
Yeah. To do so, you propose and you also practice it to find new partners, networks, alliances. Tina, for example, you say Detour Universe is part of a collective network, and you try to have different competences and also a collaborative attitude. Can you maybe explain that a little bit more so that we can imagine how it works? What is your approach?
Yeah, I think maybe it has to do with the modesty you mentioned before, because it's our project. It's not about us. It's about more than us. And I think it's super nice also to collaborate with colleagues. I talked to you in the train about it. If you have, like, I don't know, honorary issues, you can just call someone and discuss it with another architect. And I think this is super nice and super good that we have these networks, and we as a profession, we exchange about whatever. And then on a second level, I find it super interesting to think about which partners we need in each project. So, I mean, we did specific stuff like Lausanne Jardin, where we put these huge tree trunks and plants on it on Lake Geneva. And I mean, you cannot go to some execution companies and say, hey, can you please build that? And there, I think it's so interesting then to talk to experts from lake life, algs, whatever. And I really enjoy like this collaboration. And I think usually you tend to have, okay, we have this project, we need an engineer, we need I don't know, someone who plans electricity, someone who plans this and that. But there already you go in this field of we need this, that, and that to have this linear project in the end. And I think it's really nice to stop there and to think about who do we want to have in the project, who do we want to collaborate, do we need like someone, I mean, climate and durability is nowadays almost standard, but you can go on. If you build a school, maybe you want to talk to someone who is in pedagogy, or I don't know, or someone who really knows like every plant. And I think their collaboration, I really enjoy it. Not only beyond architects, but also in a wider range of experts.
Yeah. Stefan Wilser, you also practice an open, rational, collaborative, transdisciplinary, and optimistic approach. I really love the word optimistic. Tell us, what gives you this optimism, and how do you cultivate it and also spread it within your network?
That's maybe the most difficult question. I mean, optimism seems more important more than ever, no? Because I mean, there's a lot of issues and a lot of topics that you summarized in the beginning before we started this talk. No? That we seem to be in a position where we have to solve problems, where we have to react to existing problems, and we as architects still have kind of a profession where we also talk about desires, talk about what people want, talk about luxury goods, and we realized at some point as an office that we don't want to be part somehow of a very elitist luxury situation where we can only be of service to people who can still afford and who are maybe part of some of these problems, no? But we also want to address very humble and real down-to-earth problems, and therefore you need kind of this optimism that we think is important also to renegotiate the values, or as Tina in the beginning framed it, to kind of also persuade maybe people to look at things that they don't know yet that they could be of importance and stuff like that. And I think optimism became kind of a method in the end for the office to always, if people talk about problems, it's kind of nice, no? Because then you can invent things that are not these standardized requirements, and things start to move. So it's nicer to talk about the problems or as a starting point, but then try to create something out of it.
So actually, it's also a new definition of the role of the architect. So you are not only a creator at some point, yes, but you are also a facilitator, you are a moderator, you are a connector, you are a catalysator maybe of things that are there, of energy that is there, but that has to find a way to make things real. So it's yes, awakening the love, maybe. Yeah. MOOC, who is part of our architecture? It stands for an association. Yes. Who is in there?
Yeah, we have actually. I often meet very interesting young people in my university. So lots of the members are former students that are starting to practice, or young colleagues, and everybody is very interested in making it clear that we have also optimism and fun in working with existing buildings, and we think that this reduce, reuse, recycle waste hierarchy of avoidance first, and then reuse and recycle, which unfortunately is now coming back in the form of so-called circular construction. This recycling is just the last option, which is just better than dumping. But avoidance, so we try to also initiate projects. We're working, for example, somehow on a PR strategy to save the Miazza Stadium in Milano, which is supposed to be taken down. It's an incredible piece of architecture. It's thousands and thousands of tons of CO2 embodied there, and it still will be replaced by a beautiful new stadium by Foster or whatever. So I think we want to work on this in a more propagandistic way. This is why we have founded this association.
Okay. So it's like also a political action that you are taking here.
Yes, we try.
As architects.
Yes.
How to react? Yes, the question of the adapting, how to convince the client and how to bring the client to get inside this process. I mean, if we look at the Pompidou example, yes, there is always this reality that face at a certain moment the teams that expect this square meter that they want, this height under ceiling, these functionalities, and the brief we receive is it's like the wish list for the Christmas Santa Claus, no? And they want the best of the best. And at a certain moment, we as an architect, our role is to bring back everybody on the table and say, look, what you get is what we have already. So our role is really about trying to explain by the drawing, by these meetings, by visiting on site. It's to understand the reality and to acknowledge collectively, okay, this is the limitation. And your brief, which is you want to do all this, and this, I don't know, in terms of versatility, performances of the building for exhibition, etc., you will not get exactly that because this is how we have to deal with existing. So, yeah, this is part of the job.
But maybe the magic is that the architect can do always kind of magic of seduction. So the compensation by seduction, in fact, there's another way of use with this compact space and no? This means maybe the optimist attitude.
I really loved a term that you mentioned. You said la maladie des mètres carrés. So this greed to get more square meters for every use imaginable, and everyone who is involved in this institution wants also square meters and please more than the other one. So that's kind of greedy. And on the other hand, you have the generosity of this building. So if everybody gives a few square meters and maybe says, okay, I don't need so many, then at the end you have this great generosity, which is good for everyone at the end. So maybe generosity is also connected with love for the building as a whole, whereas greed is, the small view on a thing, the detail view on a thing, without understanding the whole. And maybe that is also the role for an architect, as you mentioned, Tina, also that it's not only the building, not only the room, not only the square meter, not only the building, but the whole site and the history of the site and the nature in this site and the people in this site. So actually, it's more of a holistic view that we need to take as architects and to communicate, of course. So.
Maybe I can jump in there because I find it really important that you look around. I mean, maybe not for the Centre Pompidou, but maybe as well that if the client asks you, I don't know, for example, to build multifunctional space, maybe you just first look around what is next to you in the city, especially if it's a public client, then you can tell them, why do you need it? It's like next door, maybe it's in a school, but why don't you use this one? And I think this has very much to do with regulation and zoning as well, because the school can only be in the school zone, blah, blah, blah. And I think it's so important to really also critically read the brief of the client.
Just also jumping on it, the question of making the best use of the square meters. Like when you have a museum which is half of the time empty because the process of circulation makes that you cannot open the museum to other functions during, let's say, the night or the weekends or holidays, it's a pity. So thinking about how from the beginning as designer, architect, thinking about the functionality to allow usage, like additional usage, basically. Thinking that the Tuesday when the museum is closed, how you can create events, private events, Or at night, after the museum is closed, you can have something. You can have a performance, an artist, a DJ coming. And this is, for museum, really good opportunities, also because it's helpful revenue, potentially. So helping to finance the institution.
So it's more in synergies
Yes.
and added values,
Yes.
which maybe also is an argument. Yes. Tina, you have mentioned the regulations. Now that's a point that hurts because I mean, if you really keep the building, you have a chance. But as soon as you try to reuse parts of buildings or materials of buildings, you have a lot of new issues, such as product warranties or responsibility insurance questions. This is really boring and really challenging, and I don't want to stay too long with this subject, but still I want to ask, have you a trick? How can you work with that? What do you need? Or maybe do you have solutions?
To work with existing building parts? Or
Yes, I mean, if
you've seen it sometime on the screen.
yeah.
So I have a distinctive opinion on that. So for example, it would not, for me, make no sense at all, like this project that comes there sometimes, to take load-bearing massive concrete structures from a bus garage and then put it as a facade panel. This is for me classical greenwashing, because it makes no sense at all. It's just better to keep the garage and reuse the garage. So buildings are meant to stay. They're immobilien. And so the great thing is that we can create buildings that are reusable and generous and to be loved. This is our challenge. It's this that I was mentioning. This is recycling, and recycling is not avoidance, and it's not real reuse. So that's a bit, for me, a challenge. I know everybody loves circular construction. Sorry, I have a very critical opinion to that.
Yeah, good. I think you also have a lot of fans. Does someone want to add something? Maybe also another
Yeah, maybe
idea.
trying to connect what you just said to your statement about why re-impulsive, that it's in both sides. No, because if we talk about transformation, we always transform what is already there to something new. No, and I guess to be aware that whatever we do is not the final state is also super important in this whole circularity issue. I mean, there was a project the last 4 to 5 years that taught us a lot of lessons about that, because it was a super complex, very small building that was transformed already 35 times. So you cannot talk about coherent structures. You cannot talk about all these things, but you realize that over time there was a lot of change and adaptation to always in a very rational manner, adapt the building what was asked of it. And I think this also helps, in this reuse issue, if you want to reuse structure, use it as structure, and to just adapt as little as possible. And I guess there's a lot of beauty or strength in doing this in an efficient way, not for the sake of efficiency, but as you said before, that simultaneity is always more efficient than to have 2 rooms shrinking a little bit. And these kind of issues, I guess there we can create real value without transporting tons of concrete around town.
This is the project.
That's the one, yes.
Amazing.
But then, and this is actually the last focus, and I also want to open the podium at the same time. This means that we come actually to the design process. That means that we reverse it, actually. So the classical design process for the last 100 years has been, we are the architects, we are the creators, we have a concept, that's an intellectual creation, and then we construct it and we build it using the appropriate materials. And now it would be exactly the other way around. So we evaluate what is there, what is available, And then we develop our design based on the existing. So casually said, maybe it means form follows opportunity instead of everything else. So that gives new design practices, new mindsets. Please, who wants to discuss that? Who wants to ask questions? We have experts here. Don't be afraid. That's your chance. Well, if nobody wants, then I give back to you. What does that mean? I mean, this is a new approach. Is that compatible, for example, with actual teaching at architectural schools?
Yeah, it depends. Okay, say we teaching like that from the beginning that I'm teaching, that we find things, we develop our own programs from the needs of the existing and from the possibilities. So there is teaching that takes this into account. Still, it's also good when you know how to construct. You have to have both sides, but they're really different. But it's complementary. We can make use of, even in my old generation, I can apply that knowledge also to this different process. So it's compatible, and I'm also very optimistic in so far for the future, because architects are very much needed.
Yes. Does that also lead to a new aesthetic? I mean, that's a new approach. Or is this just the wrong question? Because aesthetic is not the question here.
Aesthetic is important always in architecture. And there is naturally something like a new aesthetic that plays with, I don't know, the unfinished, ruinous, which is even a bit fashionable somehow. But I think we have to develop another sense of beauty in looking at something authentic, real, old, rundown. But it's already, I think it's even already mainstream that people start to love this.
Is it really mainstream? What does it need?
Yeah, mainstream or maybe very cliched sometimes. No, it's something we discuss a lot also with the students. I mean, I'm teaching at Heiselou in Lucerne. There's a lot of awareness with the generation that studies at the moment, and they can name this very clearly, you know, that like the professional architecture scene almost established the image of sustainable architecture before we have any clue what this actually means. No, I mean, we're just in the beginning of renegotiating terms, and there is a couple of images that appear in all the competitions that become like the brand of sustainable architecture, and I guess it should be way more open-ended. And I guess the generation of students we have at the moment, they realize that the aesthetic is still important, but it's not like the goal where you run to. It's something you have to create out of what actually still makes sense.
I think it's very important what you said, because I think for me it's not such a big difference if I construct from used materials or bought materials from industry, because also there you're limited. You have like these products and you can construct. And I think a lot of research nowadays is going into this topic of how can we make it efficient, this reuse, how can it become industrial and not just like, okay, I know this guy and he is tearing down this building, maybe I can become, I don't know, I get something out of it. And it's always this phrase of calling the city as a mine instead of taking resources from Earth. And I think it's also quite problematic to see the city as a mine, because I would completely agree with your statement that it's the immobilia and the transformation has to be there on site. And it's an easy way out. It's like with the plastics. Of course, you can recycle plastics, but I mean, the solution would be to use no plastics. And I think it's the same discussion for waste. and it's so important to learn from that. And it doesn't mean that we cannot reuse. I think it's on top.
I see that there is one question. The first and the last, because then we have to finish. But great, please.
I try. So if we talk about to use building materials which are renewable, or if we talk about we want to build for disassembling, so it's the same topic you were talking before. The question was before there, but so if I build a new structure, what do you think is the best material to use? Is there one material, or several, or if I reuse a building, which is the best material to be reused? Yeah, in this direction. I don't know if I can't really explain it better.
Actually, those are many questions in one. Can we find one answer? I don't think so.
Okay, I think you can somehow, you have to use materials for what they are the best for. So to have a facade panel in load-bearing concrete makes no sense, but to have a very refined concrete structure can make total sense. Huh? So you have to get away from all these biases, and it has to be only that and only that. We have to be very reasonable and do the right thing. We have always to, in every project it's different. And you have to find the most minimal impact. Then you found the right material.
Yeah, in every project, and maybe to add to that, almost in every object. No, I mean, that's something that also, the question is about the building, and I think we have to start looking at parts of buildings also, because they have a different lifespan, they have different performances they have to bring. And that's something that is striking to me. I mean, like, there's architects like Claude Nicolas Ledoux, like 350 years ago, wrote that buildings are put together, not sculpted. And I mean, that's something that seems to be forgotten in this very conformist, modernist approach, that everything has to be like a beautiful, coherent thing, but there's parts where it's still okay to use concrete if they're used efficiently in the long term. And I guess the material question for me should never become like a religious thing. It's a very, like, you call it like the best solution for the specific case, no?
Actually, I think that's a very good conclusion, because that, we have made the whole cycle, because we are again at the point where we talk about open minds, openness, and imagination, which is somehow also, together with love, that's the main asset of architects as professionals. And now our time is over. That was very quick, and I try to conclude, I try to recapitulate, sorry. So we have heard we have to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions over the life cycle of our buildings, but also here and now and at once, because 2030, that's very, very soon. And we know that for the world of construction, and also for architecture, these goals means a very impressive challenge that comes with a great responsibility also. But today, thanks to our guests, we have also heard many reasons to see it also as a chance for our professions, and to welcome it as an opportunity to be more creative, to rediscover or reinvent new approaches, to develop new skills, design methods and production processes, not only buildings, to find interesting new partners, to explore collaborations, to define exciting architectural languages, new ones, and to return all those impulses to society. And I hope that you are as much inspired and motivated and optimistic as I am now. I thank you very, very much for your attention. I thank the panelists for their very, very valuable contributions. I say thank you and goodbye, and I give back to our host.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Also in our name. I like the image of the love very much. If we love buildings, if we fall in love with buildings, we don't demolish them. If we are in love with people, maybe we don't kill them. If we are in love with nature, maybe we protect her. And also I learned it's eternal, the love for building. It's not only for one period. That I like very much. Thank you that you love Centre Pompidou, that you make it eternal. And we are keen on 2030. I hope that you get far, but it goes on. Thanks for moderating for the panel, and also thank you, Countdown 2030, for collaborating in this event.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for coming. I hope that we can push towards a sustainable future together. I had a lot of questions, but maybe we can discuss later. You can download this event on swissbau.com, architekturdialoge.ch, or countdown2030.ch. And don't hesitate to contact our association, Countdown 2030, if you are interested in more information about climate-friendly architecture. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.